Good afternoon, Chaos. This is Chaso, your friendly Legion's leader, here to do another roster review on one of our members in Rise of Chaos, Makeme the King. Now, Makeme the King has asked that I look over his roster, maybe see if I can notice any raid teams that he could put in aside from Phase 3, and possibly any help in his fleet arena. So, first thing, we can look at his arena squad. Rank 27, very solid squad here. See why he didn't ask for any help. He's got a pretty awesome setup. And we see his fleet arena. He has both Bigs and Wedge, X-Wings, TIE Reaper, TIE Advanced, and a TIE Fighter, currently rank 31. So a little bit of work to do there. So now that we kind of see a little bit of where he's at in the arena, let's check out Makeme the King's inventory. And the first thing I noticed, very impressive roster. Almost all of the characters that he has unlocked are 7-star, so most of them are available for raids, which made it a lot of fun actually to look around and see what possible teams could put together. And as I was looking for those teams, I noticed, Makeme the King, that you could potentially solo the raid by yourself with minimal investment at this point and great mods. Now you currently have a Phase 3 team that will do almost 80% of the damage in the raid or in the Phase 3 with your Grand Admiral Thrawn, Jin Urso, I believe Director Krennic, Shore Trooper, and somebody else. I have to look back and see, but great job there. I looked for a couple other super teams, and I noticed that your clones are geared to the teeth. Great job here. With this group, with the proper mods, you could probably almost completely solo Phase 4. But to make this group viable, first thing you need is a Zeta on Cody, which you already have. Now I noticed your mods, you have a lot of crit chance and a health set. Regardless of what the primaries are, since I know you've unlocked them or could unlock them, you want Cody to have as much speed as possible. Ideally you want over 200. The more over 200 you get, the better he's going to be. So we'll see 14 speed there, 30 speed on the arrow, good secondary speed there. We got an okay secondary speed, but that is the right triangle primary stat, critical damage. 13 speed on the cross, awesome. Now his primary stat in this slot is not as important. You really could put anything in here and he'd be just as good. All you need is a bunch of speed and 4 speed on the data bus, which puts us at a total of 191. So yes, if you could find a speed set with good speed secondaries, put it on Cody. Okay, his offense doesn't matter, his crit chance kind of matters, crit damage, not a big deal. You want him to be as fast as possible. His sole purpose in a group is to spam his 212th attack. This is the only thing that you're going to be using with him, so you want him to use it as much as possible. I know from my personal group, I can get at least 6.5 million damage, and of that 6.5 million, Cody is roughly 300,000. So his damage is negligible compared to the rest of your group. Your 5s don't want speed. 1 crit damage, or 1 crit set, 1 crit chance, 1 crit damage set. And you'll probably want crit damage on his square or triangle as well. On his arrow, you'll probably want offense. Okay, and then his cross, you want to find a potency mod. The only thing that matters for him, potency, crit chance, and offense. And potency, once you get about 45%, which you'll almost definitely get just by putting a potency arrow. A potency cross. Once you get that, you don't really need potency on him. He'll be fine. Echo. Echo's great in this group. You have a couple crit chance sets, which is good. Echo, you're going to want one crit chance set and one crit damage set again. In the arrow, speed is probably best. In triangle, crit damage, good job. Arrow, or I'm sorry, cross, offense, another good job. Speed is useful for him, but you'll want your best speed mods somewhere else. Now, Clone Sergeant, the bread and butter of a clone group. Don't put speed on him. The way he's going to work in your group, he will go after Commander Cody every single time. So his speed is 100% completely and totally irrelevant, because he will go after Commander Cody, get 50% turn meter from crits. Cody will go before his turn meter can fill up, and that'll give him the rest of the turn meter to go again. So because of his unique concentrated fire, not that unique, I'm sorry, his rotary blaster where he gains turn meter on critical hit, that is the only turn meter gain he needs. So get rid of any speed on Clone Sergeant, and again focus on one crit chance set and one crit damage set. Now, counting the buffs that he gets in a raid group, nothing matters for him except for straight offense. So find as much offense as possible. Arrow mod, offense. Square, you can only get offense. The triangle, crit damage. You don't want to get him crit chance because he will be crit capped in the raid. So that 12 crit chance is completely and totally wasted. The arrow mod, I keep saying arrow. This one is the cross. Don't want tenacity. Again, offense, 5.88%. You ideally want to get him as much over 3,000 physical damage as you can. So offense, 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 offense. Any other stat for him doesn't matter once he's in that group. Now, in your clone group in a raid, you don't want Rex. You want to use one of your rebels, Princess Leia, at least if you're running group 4. I'm sorry, phase 4. Now, Leia, you're going to want, again, a crit chance set and a crit damage set, with her arrow having speed, triangle being crit damage, and cross probably being offense. Either offense or health. Because she is very squishy, you might want the extra health here to help her live longer. Now, you want her crit chance as high as possible, or offense as high as possible, and her speed has to be faster than Commander Cody, because you want her to go first to give everybody her crit up buff. So that is what's going on with Princess Zodi team, Princess Leia, and the full clone complement outside of Rex. You want your Princess Leia to go first. You want your Commander Cody to have as much speed as possible, and then Fives and Echo pretty much load them up on crit chance and offense. Echo needs speed, Fives a little bit of potency. Clone Sergeant, offense, 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 offense. The only stat he needs. Now, with that set, with that group that can do the vast majority of phase 4 damage, I looked at your phase 1, which is pretty much relegated to only Kylo Ren, which you have, and you have him zated. You don't need anything else for phase 1. You might want to find some crit chance or crit damage mods. I've never used Kylo Ren, so I don't know exactly how much or exactly what his stats need to be, but I do know that due to his outrage, combined with his unstoppable, which you're going to be using the majority of the time, you're going to want mostly protection and crit chance. You might ask somebody else that uses him to help you more, but that's what I understand. Once I found those, you're pretty much left with phase 2 and a little bit of phase 4. Now, you have a couple options in phase 2. One of the oldest, most established is a droid Jawa combination. That combination uses an HK-47 lead with IG-88 and IG-86. which your HK and 86 are both gear 8, your IG88 gear 11. Great job. And combine them with 2 Jawas, the Jawa Engineer and Chief Nebbit as a tank. Now your Jawa Engineer is nice, only gear 7 though. Chief Nebbit is level 70, so you have to level him up, but he is gear 8. And those two could combine with the droids. That would take a little bit of gear to get up to speed, but definitely doable. Another Phase 2 super team is the Zader team, because I noticed looking through your roster that you have Darth Vader's lead Zated. This team built around him is all about building as many damage over time effects as possible on the turret, on the main tank, and then nuking it with his Culling Blade. Because if you keep stacking those dots, Culling Blade is going to do an insane amount of damage. I believe in Slack chat we saw a couple people hitting 130, 140,000 damage in one crit. So that's a big deal. So you're going to want people around him that offer dots. Now, typically, Darth Sidious will go with Vader, and Darth Sidious will have his sadistic glee Zated, but you're obviously a long way away from that. So I found a couple guys that you might be able to use instead. One that typically goes is Boba Fett, who you could use. He is gear 8 now, but you could bring him up to gear 11 relatively quickly. I mean, Boba Fett is an intense gear, but he is very useful, and his EE3 carbine has a chance to inflict damage over time effects, as well as a chance to attack twice and put 2 damage over time effects. And his execute works a lot like Culling Blade, so he works amazing with a Darth Vader Zeta lead. So you want to make sure to get him geared no matter what else you do with that group, because he will probably be your second most damage. But without a Darth Sidious, your dots are going to be a little bit lower. So I actually found a rather unusual addition to that group, and that's in the form of a Gamorrean Guard. Now Gamorrean Guard's basic also could inflict damage over time effects, so he could help build up those dots since you don't have Darth Sidious, and he can also help protect your Boba Fett. And the fourth guy who I would recommend in that group for you, who is the TIE Fighter Pilot. The TIE Fighter Pilot, he may not seem like an obvious choice, but he does go quickly. He can help nuke down the turrets, and if the turrets are going down at a quick pace, you could target the main tank itself and use his targeting computer basic on the tank before the topples even come up, because he does extra damage for each enemy suffering a debuff. So he could come in useful in there. You might be able to find another character that does dots to help, but I think TIE Fighter Pilot would fit in comfortably with that group. Now, the last person in that group, who is a pretty typical character you see with a Darth Vader Zeta lead, is Captain Phasma, who could use some more gear. Now, the reason she is brought in that group is for her Victory March, because her Victory March gives allies advantage, which is a guaranteed crit. So, if you can guarantee that Boba Fett will crit his execute and Darth Vader will crit his Culling Blade, you're looking at easily 200,000 damage in 2 hits. So it is vital that you get Captain Phasma to go with your Darth Vader lead. So that is another Phase 2 super team that you have fairly easily available to you. The third super team I noticed that you've got that can pretty much go right away is a Rebel group. Now, the super group of rebels, or the rebel super team, works under a Wedge Antilles lead because his leader ability lets everybody regain health, gives them turn meter on crits, and gives them a ton of offense. Now, it is my understanding that for Wedge Antilles, you would probably gear him crit chance, crit damage, and he doesn't need a ton of speed, so you could focus on crit damage, crit offense, or crit chance and offense mods. Wedge likes to go with his good buddy Biggs, so keep Biggs with him. Biggs, I believe you'll want to mod crit chance and speed, or crit chance and crit damage. Again, I'm not super familiar with the rebels, so with some testing I could maybe find some more, but I know there are other people that use the rebels that could give you much better advice on mods. Now, along with Wedge and Biggs, commonly referred to as Wigs, you will probably want to bring in Lando Calrissian as well. Lando Calrissian's double down ability, which will do a bunch of damage in AoEs, and if it has more than one crit, it resets the cooldown and deals 100% more damage on its next use. You can get some massive stacks of this damage. Oops, you won't use fast and loose. And High Roller gives him an additional crit chance, so he may not need as many crit chance mods, and I see you've got a good setup here with crit damage and crit chance, so he is a good one to put there. Now, I'm not entirely sure what everybody runs with these rebels, but in addition to those three, personally I would recommend R2-D2, especially if you can get his number crunch Zeta'd. That number crunch gives all your rebels 10% of R2-D2's offense, potency, health, and protection, so they will all be extra tanky, and that extra tankiness combined with the health steal from Wedge Antilles will do awesome. Now, there are two options to put with that group. That could either be Admiral Akbar as a cleanser / healer, who can give turn meter. I believe give turn meter. Yes. He gains himself turn meter. I'm not entirely sure that he gives everybody else turn meter. But either way, but he wouldn't be my first choice. My first choice for you, Make Me the King, because you have a very deep roster, would be Fulcrum Ahsoka Tano. With the buffs that are being thrown out by your Biggs and R2-D2, I believe excuse me, I believe Ahsoka Tano could be a really good addition to your rebel group, so consider adding her to it. So that's really 4 groups right there that you could put together that would do really well in the raids. Just a notable mention, the Jedi, you could make another group out of these. My recommendation would be to Zeta Qui-Gon Jinn, so that you have his leader ability Zeta, and put him with Jedi Knight Anakin. And if you don't use R2 with your rebels, put R2 in this Jedi group, and use some combination of Aayla Secura, Ahsoka Tano, and Ezra Bridger. Or if you don't use R2, use Qui-Gon, Jedi Knight Anakin, Aayla Secura, Ahsoka Tano, and Ezra Bridger. That is a massive amount of damage that is possible with those 5, so they could work well for you. Now, if you worked on those 4 or 5 groups, you could probably solo the raid. So it's up to you which one you want to work on first, and which one you want to idealize the mods, but you have got the pieces. Now, to switch from the characters, let's look at your ships for a minute, which I see you have some pretty powerful ships, and I think we saw you are running Biggs and Wedge, the TIE Advanced, the TIE Reaper, and the TIE Fighter in your starting 5, which is not a bad idea. I would suggest that you put the Umbaran Starfighter instead of Wedge's X-Wing in your starting lineup, because Wedge's X-Wing is not as dependable, or actually is not possible for him to put in target locks. Whereas the Umbaran Starfighter, his special Umbaran missile pods is a guaranteed target lock, which will give you a quick taunt on your bigs. And the Umbaran Starfighter has the added benefit of being one of the fastest ships in the game, so he will go quickly. And you can use him to force one of the opponent's ships to go before all the others if you want to. Now, I'm going to guess you are using the Umbaran Starfighter, Sunfac, and Ahsoka Tano as your reinforcements. Not a bad idea. However, I do think you will want to replace Wedge Antilles, Sunfac, and Ahsoka Tano once you finish tricking out and gearing 3 different ships of their pilots. And those 3 ships I would recommend as being the First Order TIE Fighter, Slave 1, and the Gauntlet Starfighter. Not seen much of the Gauntlet Starfighter, but I believe he has an amazing potential in the type of group that you're running. But if you don't want to do that and you want something that can work a little bit quicker, then perhaps Darth Maul's Scimitar could work for you. So there you have it. In the long run, keep your TIE Advanced, Umbaran Starfighter, TIE Reaper, Imperial TIE Fighter, and Biggs Darklighter as your starting lineup. And then as you finish gearing them up, bring in your First Order TIE Fighter, Slave 1, and Gauntlet Starfighter, or Scimitar if you'd prefer. And that will give you an almost unstoppable team on offense. And if you moved your First Order TIE Fighter in your starting lineup instead of the TIE Reaper, you would have an even more ridiculous burst damage group. So, there you have it. Oh, and yes, continue using your Executrix as a leader. That is the perfect lead for that group, and you will not regret it. So, Makeme the King, hopefully you can take this, gear up those guys, and continue becoming the elite damage dealer of chaos that you already are well on your way to becoming. Just work on those groups, make them finish gearing out the players that you need, and farm up those mods, and you will be setting records for chaos in no time. And this is Hekalatos again, your friendly Legion's leader, saying have a nice night and good luck, everybody.